Hey everyone, Joe Carroll here. Welcome to the Produce Like a Pro channel. Glad to be with you guys today because Warren asked me to mix a cover of Paranoid Android from Radiohead, which is pretty fun. I had a great time. Honestly, part of the beauty of it is that I didn't do much. It's just got so much attitude. You know, when I listened to the original as a reference, it wasn't about the mix. I mean, that's the thing. It was really just about the song. It was about the attitude. It was about the scene changes. The mix itself was not glamorous whatsoever. I mean, you don't walk away from that thinking, wow, what a skill set that guy has. No, you just walk away thinking Radiohead, is badass or something like that. And that's cool. That's fantastic. So I kind of wanted to do something similar and not make anything too overly polished or too well thought out. That said, let's just talk about a couple things. One of the the big sections of the song, we'll call it, is something like this.
You don't remember, why don't you remember my name? Off with his head, man, off with his head, man, why don't you remember my name? Yes, he does.
Okay, a handful of things hit you as far as like really cool, or at least hit me, and that's the guitar tones, number one. And I want you to see how I was doing not very much. So we have Johnny over here on our left, and the only plugin going is an SSL channel strip. And you will see that it is, by finished mix standards, not very much. A 3.5 at 8K, just that SSL, just a little bit of that SSL shine that they do so well on electrics. And then 2.7 dB at 3.5K. So just a little bite. And let's see if I'm tickling this compressor right here. Okay, so fast attack, I am tickling the compressor. So that energy that I'm adding with these boosts is kind of it's kind of being tamped down just a little bit by the fast attack channel strip compressor that SSL has built in right here. So it's that's a thing we've been doing on SSL consoles since the 80s. So let me play you a little before and after. Awesome. And here's after. So it's gonna be a little angrier, and it's gonna fight through the mix just a little bit more. And then we have Ed on the other side that's playing the primary electric, the rhythm that's on the right hand side. And you'll see, again, very little processing by today's standards that we so often do. About 1.5 dB, 1.7 actually, of 8K, that same thing that we like to do so much on electrics, and 3.5 dB of 3.5K. So very similar. They're different guitars, it's different guitars, different heads. I'm sure there's lots of things that's different, but pretty much the same treatment. And I do have the fast attack compressor on, so we'll see what that's doing. Here's no treatment. And with treatment. And yeah, we will see that fast attack compressor is tapping it down just a little bit. And then I do notice also there's a high pass filter. So, boosting a little 8K, there is going to be some stuff in the upper octave on an electric guitar that's not very prominent, but nonetheless is there, that I don't want to affect, the sound of the vocalist, there's drum overheads. I just don't need any of that kind of stuff. So I do have a low pass filter going on both guitars, as you can see, right around 10.5 cycles. And so here's the two together in the mix.
Why don't you remember my name? Off with his head, man, off with his head, man, why don't you remember?
About halfway through the, we'll call it the chorus or whatever, he switches to to a solo. That kind of a vibe. And you'll see it's very similar, doing just a little bit less. So 2 dB of 3.5, 2.2 of 8, and then there is just a little cut that I don't believe I was doing on the rhythm guitar part. But this fast attack compressor, same kind of thing. Before and after. This is going to cut through the track a little bit more. So let's do this. Let's listen to this section right here with the EQs off.
Off with his head, man, off with his head, man, why don't you remember my name? Yes, he does.
I mean, mean, they're awesome, but can we make them just a tiny bit more angry with that 3.5K?
Off with his head, man, off with his head, man. Why don't you remember my name? Yes, he does.
Yes, we can. And that said, we have a little bit of slap going on this guy. A little bit of slap going on him, and on Ed, we have the same thing. And it looks like that is it. So there's no reverb whatsoever, just a little bit of a slap delay. And then on the electric, the solos, when he starts really hammering, we're hitting a longer delay, as well as even a longer delay. So here's that. That has some reverb going too. So let me do just the two delays. So it's going to be very similar to a slap, but instead of being tape-based, like 15 ips or something like that, it's going to be 30. And here's the longer one. And then a little plate reverb. Here's a little too much of that. And let's take a look at what I was running. Let's just scroll down here to my effects return, and we'll see that the plate was a Lexicon 480 from the one from Relab. It's the fat plate setting, about 2.33 seconds, very little pre-delay, so it pretty much goes right into reverb, putting just a little bit of distance on it. And then for the delays, it looks like we have a couple. So the short delay is tape-based. It's a 16th note. And then we have the Echo Boy for the long one, and it is a memory man on an 8th note. And then on the slap for the rhythm sections, we had, yes, it's tape-based. So that would be, 133, I believe it's 15 ips, 133 milliseconds. That was the idea. This is a really basic song. It's just about attitude and aggression. It's not about anything that we can bring to the table other than making sure the listener hears it the way that the band wants them to hear it. That said, the other really cool thing about it is this girl's voice. It's just dripping with just nose crinkling attitude. So let's kind of look a little bit at what I did on her vocals.
You don't remember. Why don't you remember my name? Off with his head, man, off with his head, man. Why don't...
Okay, so this is the kind of thing, the vocals aren't way out front. It's not about... It's not that the lyrics aren't important like they are in country and some other things like that, because they are, but it's, the powerful guitars kind of being up there with them and is part of the sound. So let's just kind of look, and I think it did a lot of my normal kind of thing. Well, let's just go one at a time here, and we'll help me remember that the lo-fi was off. So a little multi-band compression.
Why don't you remember my name? Off with his head, man, off with his head, man. Why don't you...
So you can see it's carving out a lot of low mids that's making her fit into the track better. But it only, instead of being a static cut, it's only when it's digging in, that's building up. And then thinning it out a lot.
Why don't you remember my name? Off with his head, man, off with his head.
Chopping off some top end too. It looks like we're going, starting a high pass filter at around 12K. So definitely wasn't going for shiny and bright. RVox.
Why don't you remember my name? Off with his head, man, off with his head.
So as you can see, it's cut fairly dynamic. It doesn't look like it was cut with a lot of compression. So I'm using a decent amount of compression. And then we follow that with something like a distressor.
Why don't you remember my name? Off with his head, man, off.
Now, there's a couple things about the distressor that I want to talk about. First of all, on the modes here, you'll see I do have bell engaged. So that's making that 1K, 2K area of the mid-range is where the compressor is most sensitive. And that's where a vocal lives very often, especially a female vocalist that's got this attitude like that. So the compressor is very sensitive to what she's doing. So that's why that's selected. And then a little harmonic distortion as well. But you see, it's a pretty fast attack and a pretty fast release. Nothing out of the ordinary at all. But, it's nonetheless, those two combined are giving us quite a bit of compression. and a little de-essing with the solid state logic de-esser.
Why don't you remember my
And I love how you can set the points on the SSL. It's not just where it's centered, it's everything above this frequency is affected and below this frequency. I love that. Plus, I think it sounds great. And then I'm let's see, what am I doing here? 815 cycles, this right here.
Why don't you remember my name? Off with his head, man, off.
I think I felt like ducking that just a little bit made the guitars more powerful.
Why don't you remember my name?
You can see right here, it's just ducking just a little of it it's ducking just a little bit of it only when it builds up.
Why don't you remember my name?
Now the lo-fi, I messed with it, because I was thinking about adding some distortion effects, and I just couldn't get happy with it. So I just thought, okay, that's not what I want to do here. And then a little bit of a limiter, tapping it here and there.
Why don't you remember my name? Off with his head.
So you can see at the highest point we was getting 3.5 across the whole song, 3.5. That's a running history. So it's just barely tapping it here and there. And that is also feeding a parallel compressor right here.
Why don't you remember my name?
Here's without the parallel.
Why don't you remember my name? Off with his head, man. Off with his head, man. Why don't you?
And the effects, there's primarily two things going on. We have a slap.
Why don't you remember?
Let me play too much of it.
Why don't you remember my name?
And you'll see it's kind of mono. It's not mono, but it's not full wide stereo either. And that is the solid state logic X echo.
Why don't you remember my name? Off with his head, man. Off with his head.
See how you can adjust the width right here built into it, so it can be big, wide stereo, beyond stereo, or it can be completely mono and anywhere in between. I love having that option, and the McDSP EC300 has that as well. So that's one. Other than the fact they just sound amazing, that's another reason that I use those two plugins very heavily for delays. And then we do have a little bit of reverb going. It's not a lot, but nonetheless, it is there on sections. And that is the A plate from Lexicon. This is the Relab version of it. It's the A plate is just it's as classic as a U47, just about, to me. We've heard it on that many hits.
Why don't you remember my name?
So here's the vocal. Let's go to the vocal. Make it very raw.
Why don't you remember my name?
Oh, and I do have a little stereo spreader.
Why don't you remember my name?
Hear that little bit of coursing effect. Here's without it.
Why don't you remember my name?
So here's with the effects.
Why don't you remember my name?
Put it in the mix. It really doesn't sound that aggressive at all. I mean, it doesn't sound that wet.
Why don't you remember my name? Off with his head, man. Off with his head, man. Why don't you remember my name?
But one thing I do want to show you, so we dry it up right there. But this song, this Paranoid Android song, it has a lot of scene changes, as you guys know. And so what I was doing, there's a much longer, denser reverb. That's only hitting those moments that are real dreamy, so to speak. And that is, let's see, where's that at? Here it is. It is the Sonsig, 100 milliseconds of decay. Of pre-delay, 100 milliseconds of pre-delay, 99 to be more specific, and 2.68 on the decay time. It's a great patch. I use that a lot, that plugin. And that's pretty much it. The drums, they were really just mixed with SSL channel strips. There's nothing. When you hear the mix, the drums are not, dare I say, they're just not impressive. It's not about that. So you'll see it's just a bunch of SSLs here and there. It's played a little dynamic on the kick drum, so I actually was trimming the spots like in the chorus, for example, because it was just popping out of the mix way too much. You'll see right here. See that? See how loud some of those are?
You don't remember.
So I'm tapping it down. See that? Knocking it down a few dB so it stays a little more consistent.
Off with his head man, off with his head man.
And that is my two biggest takeaways from mixing this song is that the guitars and the vocals are kind of the star to me. And number two is that I needed to be pretty hands off and just not do that much and just let the song be awesome because the performers are awesome and the arrangement is awesome. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed. Take care. Happy mixing.